For nearly 43 years, Sheri Jo Elliott's family has been left wondering who killed the 16-year-old in November of 1983. Thanks to advanced DNA technology, a man has been identified.
She left her house with her school books in her hands. She never got on the bus. November 16, 1983. Flint, Michigan, 16-year-old Sheri Jo Elliot walked out her front door early that morning. She was heading to a bus stop just a few blocks from home. She never got there. That evening, she missed a babysitting job she never missed. 4 days later, a man checking his muskrat traps found her body in a drainage ditch, dozens of miles away. For more than 40 years, the person responsible walked free. He played music in local bars. People knew his name. Nobody knew what he had done. If cases like this should not be forgotten, stay with me. And if you want more respectful cold case stories like this one, this channel is a good place to be. Sheri Jo Elliot was not just a case file. She was a real girl with a real life. She was a sophomore at Carmen High School. She had just moved to Flint that summer to live with her mother, Joyce Schultz. Before that, she had lived with her father near Charlotte, Michigan. Moving to Flint was a fresh start. A new school. A new home, a new routine. People who knew her described her the same way. Shy, smart, careful, kind-hearted. She was not the kind of teenager who disappeared without telling anyone. She was not a runaway. She followed a schedule. School, home, babysitting, family time. Every day, more or less the same. She also worked as a babysitter after school. Families trusted her. She showed up on time. She did not miss shifts. That small detail matters more than it sounds. Because on the day she vanished, that habit broke. And it broke in a way her family knew was wrong. Think about how ordinary her life looked, just weeks before everything changed. She woke up early. She got her books together. She walked familiar streets. She had a mother who was happy to have her close again, after time spent living apart. She had a bedroom in a new house that was slowly starting to feel like home. She had plans. She had people waiting for her. She had a life beyond the case file that would later be written about her. It is easy, in true crime stories, to let a victim become only a date and a location, a name attached to tragedy, and nothing else. But Sheri was a teenage girl with a routine, a family, and a future she never got to reach. That matters. It should matter every time her story is told. Early in the morning, around 6 to 6:30, Sheri left her home on Seneca Street. She was carrying her school books. She was wearing a maroon jacket and blue jeans. She was walking toward the bus stop near West Dartmouth and Lavelle Road. She was seen walking in that direction. And then, nothing. No one saw her get on the bus. No one saw her at school. Somewhere between her front door and that bus stop, she disappeared. At 5:30 that evening, she was supposed to arrive at a babysitting job. She did not show up. For a girl who never missed her responsibilities, this was not normal. This was a warning sign. Her family felt it immediately. By nightfall, panic had set in. Calls were made. Neighbors were asked. Nobody had seen her since the morning. The search began right away. Family members, neighbors, and police canvassed the area around her home and the bus stop. Flyers went up in store windows. People walked the streets, calling her name. For a while, there was still hope. Maybe she had gone somewhere unexpected. Maybe there was an explanation nobody had thought of yet. That hope is common in the early days of any disappearance. It is also the hardest thing to let go of. But as one day passed, and then another, that hope began to fade. Every hour without news made the situation feel heavier. Her family kept searching anyway, because searching was the only thing they could do. But the answers did not come from Flint. They came from somewhere else entirely. 4 days later, on November 20th, a man was checking his muskrat traps along a rural road in Blumfield Township, in Saginaw County. That area is dozens of miles from where Sheri disappeared. It is farmland. Empty fields, a quiet drainage ditch connected to a small creek. That is where he found her. A police officer went to Sheri's home that day. He carried something small with him. A ring. Her father had given it to her. When her mother Joyce saw that ring, she understood before anyone said a word. An autopsy would later show that Sheri had suffered gunshot wounds. She had also been sexually assaulted. Her cause of death was blood loss from those gunshot wounds. Investigators believed she may have still been alive as late as November 19th. That means she may have survived for days after she disappeared. We are not going to describe the injuries in detail. Some pain does not need to be repeated in graphic terms to be understood. What matters is this: Sheri suffered before she died. And for years, her family did not know how long, or where, or why. Investigators searched hard in those first weeks. They looked at everyone close to the case. In the earliest stage, some reports mention that Sheri's stepfather, Robert Schultz, came under scrutiny, along with others close to the family. But no charges were ever filed against him. No evidence tied him to what happened. Investigators simply had to look everywhere, because a teenage girl had vanished without a single confirmed witness. In July of 1984, the Flint Journal reported a possible lead. A witness said they saw a man, somewhere in his 30s or 40s, with gray hair, pulling a young girl into a dark-colored vehicle. This was reportedly near the same time and area where Sheri disappeared. A second witness described the vehicle differently. Police searched for matching vehicles. But the lead went nowhere. It became one more unanswered question, in a case already full of them. Imagine being a detective in that moment. You have a possible sighting. You have a general description, but you do not have a license plate, a clear face, or a name. You have just enough information to feel close, and just little enough to feel completely stuck. So why did nobody see more? Why did a girl disappear from a public street, in daylight, with no clear witness to what happened next? That question would stay unanswered for decades. Here is something important. In 1983, DNA testing did not exist the way it does today. Investigators could not run a suspect's DNA through a database and get a match. That kind of science was still years away. But whoever collected evidence from Sheri's case made a choice that mattered more than anyone realized at the time. They preserved it. Carefully, properly, as if they somehow knew that one day science would catch up. For years, that evidence sat in storage. It could not speak yet. It was waiting for technology that had not been invented. Meanwhile, the case went cold. Detectives moved on to new cases. Files were opened and closed and reopened again over the decades. The Michigan State Police 3rd District Cold Case Team returned to Sheri's file multiple times over the years. Each time, they hit the same wall. They had DNA, but they had no name to match it to. DNA databases only work if the person's profile is already in the system. If the person responsible had never been arrested, never given a sample, never appeared in any database, then a match was almost impossible. The evidence sat there, correct and complete, but useless without a name attached to it. How does a case with real, physical evidence stay unsolved for over 40 years? It is not because nobody cared. It is because the evidence needed a tool that had not been built yet. Every year that passed, the science got a little closer. But closer is not the same as close enough. And for a family waiting on answers, not yet can feel like forever. For Sheri's family, this meant living with an unfinished story for nearly 40 years. Her mother carried a painful thought for decades. During those 4 missing days, searchers were looking in Flint. But Sheri may have already been dozens of miles away. Somewhere out there, she may have still been alive, while people searched the wrong place. Her aunt, Judy Sika, held on to memories of Sheri as a young girl, coming through the door, greeting her with a hug. Those memories did not fade, but answers did not come either. Then, in 2023, something changed. That year marked the 40th anniversary of Sheri's murder. Instead of letting the anniversary pass quietly, Michigan State Police reopened the case with new energy. This time, they brought in outside help. Not just new forensic tools, but new people. The Western Michigan University Cold Case Program joined the investigation. This program lets college students work directly with real, unsolved cases, under strict supervision. Before touching any file, the students went through background checks, fingerprinting, and confidentiality training. They worked in secure conditions. They were trusted with material most people never see. Their job was not glamorous. It was paperwork. Decades of paperwork. Old case files. Handwritten reports. Boxes of documents that had never been digitized. For a small group of detectives handling many open cases, going through all of that by hand takes an enormous amount of time. Time they often do not have. So how does a cold case actually move forward after 40 years? Sometimes it is not one big breakthrough. Sometimes it is dozens of small people doing dozens of small tasks, so the right pieces finally line up in one place. The students built timelines. They organized records. They digitized handwritten notes so they could finally be searched. They built family trees. They researched persons of interest using public records. They traced old addresses, old jobs, and old connections, trying to understand who moved where and when. None of this work looked exciting on its own. There were no chases, no dramatic interviews, just hours spent reading old reports, cross-checking names, and building a clearer picture out of decades of scattered paper. But that quiet, careful work is often what modern cold case investigations actually look like. Slowly, an old, scattered case file became something usable again. They did not replace the detectives. They gave the detectives time back. Time to focus on where the evidence pointed next. And the evidence had a new place to go. Michigan State Police's Forensic Science Division partnered with a private lab called Othram, based in Texas. Othram specializes in a method called forensic-grade genome sequencing. This is different from older DNA testing methods. Older testing asks a simple question: is this person's DNA already in a police database? If not, there is no match, and the trail ends there. Genetic genealogy asks a different question: who is this unknown person related to? Even distant family connections can help build a family tree, and sometimes that family tree leads investigators to one specific name. By late 2025, that is exactly what happened. The genetic genealogy work pointed toward a man named Roni Collins. He was 75 years old, living in Grand Blanc, Michigan. In 1983, he would have been 33 years old. And he had ties to the Flint area, around the same time Sheri disappeared. Roni Collins was not a stranger hiding somewhere unseen. He was known in the local music scene. He played bass guitar. He reportedly performed under the nickname Hendrix with a band called The Goodfoot at a bar called Scooters in Mundy Township. People who knew him described him in ordinary, even friendly terms. He was not hiding in the shadows. He was playing music in front of people, for years, under a name they knew. Think about what that means. While a family searched for answers for 40 years, the person genetic genealogy would later point to was living an ordinary life nearby, working, performing, being introduced to strangers by a nickname. Nobody watching him play bass guitar in a local bar had any reason to think about a 16-year-old girl who vanished on her way to school decades earlier. Investigators, with help from the research the students had done, began mapping his life, his neighborhood in 1983, his movements, his history. Piece by piece, his background lined up closely enough with the case to matter. There is one more thread in this story, and it needs to be handled carefully. Back in 1969, two teenage girls, Patricia Spencer and Pamela Hobley, disappeared on Halloween night in Oscoda, Michigan. At the time, Roni Collins was around 19 years old, connected to local bands, and reportedly seen driving a van in that area. Police questioned him. He denied any involvement. No bodies were ever found. No physical evidence connected him to that case. It remained cold, and it remains cold today. We want to be very clear here. Being questioned decades ago does not mean someone was responsible. There is no confirmed evidence linking Collins to that 1969 case. His name has simply resurfaced, and investigators have renewed interest in looking closer. That is all that can honestly be said right now. Back to 2026. By January, investigators believed they were close. They wanted a voluntary DNA sample from Roni Collins to compare directly against the evidence from Sheri's case. Before that sample could be collected, Collins died by suicide in Grand Blanc in January of 2026. Some people have wondered whether he sensed investigators were closing in. That thought is understandable. But it is speculation. Nothing in the available record confirms why he made that choice. What happened next changed everything. During his autopsy, medical examiners collected a DNA sample, as is standard procedure. That sample was sent to the Michigan State Police Forensic Science Division. It was compared against the DNA evidence preserved from Sheri's case, more than 40 years earlier. The result was conclusive. It matched. They never got his voluntary sample. But in the end, they still got his DNA. For weeks, only a small group knew the truth. Detectives, lab officials, and a group of college students, some of them close in age to what Sheri had been when she died, who had spent months helping organize the very files that led to this answer. Under confidentiality rules, none of them could say a word publicly. They simply carried the knowledge quietly, waiting for the official announcement. On April 13, 2026, Michigan State Police made it official. They announced that the 1983 kidnapping and killing of Sheri Jo Elliot had finally been solved. They identified Roni Collins as the individual responsible. But there was no arrest that day. There could not be. He was never arrested. He was never charged. There was no trial, no conviction, no sentencing. He was gone before any of that could happen. The case was solved. But the courtroom never came. For Sheri's family, the news brought something complicated. Relief, mixed with grief that never fully left. Her aunt, Judy Sika, spoke about decades of pain and the shock of finally learning who had done this. Her mother, Joyce, who had spent so many years haunted by the thought that her daughter might have still been alive during those first missing days, finally had a name to attach to that pain. The answer did not erase the grief. It gave the grief a name. There is no ruling that undoes 43 years of not knowing. There is no sentence that gives back the years Sheri's family spent wondering what happened during those final days. But there is a difference between silence and certainty. And after this long, certainty was not nothing. It was, finally, something solid to hold on to. The students who had worked on the case, quietly, for months, later received a letter from Sheri's family, thanking them for their part in finally bringing an answer home. It was read aloud at a small gathering, in front of the students and the detectives who had worked alongside them. For students who were close in age to Sheri when she disappeared, the moment was personal, even though their work had to stay professional and quiet the entire time. Could their work help other families still waiting on answers? That question is part of why this story matters beyond one case. Cold case units and university partnerships like this, one exist in a handful of places now. Every file they reopen carries the same possibility that somewhere in a box of old paperwork, a small detail is waiting to matter again. This case leaves behind a few simple truths. Evidence, preserved carefully, can wait decades and still matter. In 1983, nobody could test that DNA the way we can today. But somebody made sure it survived long enough for science to finally catch up. Partnerships matter too. A state police unit, a university program, and a private forensic lab working together closed a gap that none of them could have closed alone. And technology keeps changing what is possible. A method that did not exist in 1983 eventually gave a family the one thing they had been missing for over 40 years. A name. Sheri Jo Elliot left for school one morning in 1983 and she never came home. For more than 4 decades, her family lived with silence, unanswered questions, and a case that refused to close on its own. In 2026, science finally broke that silence. But the man identified was already gone. No trial, no verdict. Just a name, arriving far too late, and a family finally allowed to stop wondering.